You're worthless.
Worthless? Watch me rise.
I'm standing in the courthouse parking lot with nothing but a wrinkled suit and a folder full of papers that basically say my life is over. My ex-wife, Rebecca, just took our $3.2 million house, grabbed half of everything I'd worked for over 30 years, and walked off with this look on her face like she just won the lottery. As we're walking out through those massive glass doors, she leans over to me. For a second, I think maybe she's going to say something kind, acknowledge the 3 decades we spent together. Instead, she looks me straight in the eye and says, "You're worthless." Then she drives off with Marcus, the guy who'd been my closest friend since college. He doesn't even glance back. That night, I'm sleeping in my pickup behind some 24-hour diner trying to figure out how everything fell apart so fast. Around 1 a.m., my phone buzzes. Unknown caller. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something makes me pick up. This woman with a thick accent says, "Mr. Harrison, we've been attempting to contact you for 16 years. This is Rothschild International Banking in Geneva. We have reason to believe you're the legal heir to an account established by Victor Harrison." I go completely still. Uncle Victor disappeared like 20 years ago. The woman continues, "Mr. Harrison, the current balance is $52 million. My hands start shaking. Then she adds, "There's something important you should understand about the conditions he set. My name's David Harrison, and I'm 52 years old. Until recently, I thought my life was pretty solid. I wasn't crazy rich, but I'd built something real over 3 decades in the construction business. Started from nothing, worked my way up, believed in doing things right and treating people fairly. I spent 30 years swinging hammers, laying foundations with my own 2 hands, earning every single dollar through sweat and busted knuckles. I believed in loyalty, in family, in waking up before dawn and going to bed exhausted. I thought that kind of dedication was enough to hold a life together. Turns out I was wrong about that. Met Rebecca when we were both 19 years old. Got married at 22. She had this incredible energy about her that made everyone pay attention when she walked in, this way of lighting up a room without saying much at all. I fell hard and fast, head over heels. We started with basically nothing, just a tiny 1-bedroom apartment upstate and big dreams about building something together. I took whatever construction work I could find, roofing, framing, remodeling, anything that paid decent money. Rebecca worked as a receptionist during the day and went to nursing school at night. Those first years were genuinely good. We were a real team back then, working toward the same goals. We celebrated our first tax return like we'd won the lottery. We built our credit slowly and carefully, bought a rundown house that needed serious work, and poured everything we had into fixing it up properly. I'd work until my fingers literally bled, and she'd bring me lemonade and sandwiches, sitting on the front steps talking about our future together. I loved her deeply. I truly did with everything I had. Eventually, I started my own contracting crew. Word spread around town about quality work. I got bigger jobs, higher paying contracts with better clients. One year, I landed this huge municipal contract that changed everything overnight. We went from barely scraping by to actually having real money in the bank. That's when I surprised her with the mansion. It wasn't some flashy glass palace or modern monstrosity. It was this classic brick estate with ivy growing up the walls and tall mature trees surrounding the property like a protective barrier. Westchester County, quiet neighborhood, peaceful streets. 5 bedrooms, a wine cellar we never actually used for anything, and a garden Rebecca said she'd fill with lavender but never got around to planting. It cost $3.2 million. I paid most of it in cash from my savings and financed the rest. I genuinely thought I was giving her everything she ever dreamed of having. She called it a real home, said it was perfect. But something fundamental shifted after that move. Rebecca started to change in ways I didn't recognize. She joined some exclusive country club group, then got herself on some charity board with wealthy people. Her hair was always professionally done at expensive salons. She started talking more about wine tastings and auction galas and less about having dinner at home together as a family. I chalked it up to personal growth and development. People change as they get older, right? I figured maybe I just needed to catch up to her new lifestyle and interests. Still, I tried my best to keep our life grounded in what actually mattered. I spent weekends with our daughter Madison whenever I could. She's 24 now, a brilliant young woman with my stubborn streak and her mother's sharp wit and intelligence. We'd watch movies together, walk the dogs around the property, go fishing off the dock when we could find time. My mother Patricia still lives in the modest house I grew up in, just outside the city limits. Every Sunday after church, without fail, I'd bring her over to the mansion for dinner, even when Rebecca started making increasingly obvious excuses about being too busy or too tired to deal with family. Then there was Marcus. He was so much more than just a friend to me. We'd been through absolutely everything together for 3 decades of friendship. We'd built decks side by side in the summer heat, went hunting together every fall season, helped each other move furniture when needed, drank beer under the stars, talking about life and dreams. When my father passed away unexpectedly, Marcus was the one who held my mother's hand at the funeral when I couldn't find the words to speak or function properly. I trusted him more than I trusted my own brother. I would have taken a bullet for that man without hesitation. I never saw what was happening right under my nose. Maybe deep down I didn't want to see it. Rebecca and Marcus started spending more and more time together over months. Charity events, late-night planning meetings for fundraisers, committee work. She said I was too tired all the time, that I was always working and never emotionally available for her needs. I didn't argue with her about it. I just kept going, kept working even harder, thinking if I provided even more financially, she'd see how much I still loved her deeply. But the distance between us just kept growing wider and more obvious. We stopped talking about anything that actually mattered in our relationship. She moved her things into the guest bedroom permanently. More nights than not, I'd lie awake alone in our bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how we got so far away from those early days on the porch, eating sandwiches and dreaming about our future together. I kept thinking about something my Uncle Victor told me when I was 17 years old. He was the odd one in the family, the black sheep everyone whispered about, always drove a luxury car, wore expensive cufflinks to Thanksgiving dinner like he was going to a business meeting. He once looked me straight in the eye and said very seriously, "Kid, never think a roof over your head means safety. Sometimes it just keeps the truth from falling on your head and crushing you." I didn't understand what he meant back then. I sure as hell understand it now after everything. The real collapse of our marriage wasn't one single dramatic moment. It was a slow erosion over time, like water wearing down stone over years and years. Trust wore away bit by bit, day by day. I kept hoping desperately she'd turn back around, that we'd somehow find some way to fix what was clearly broken between us. But she was already gone completely. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually checked out. All that was left was the paperwork to make it official. And even then, I didn't expect her to go as far as she ultimately did. I didn't see the storm coming until it hit with full, devastating force. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early spring. I remember that detail clearly because I always tried to come home early on Tuesdays specifically. I'd been working a job 2 hours away, a large custom deck extension with expensive cedar planks that required precision. I wrapped up early, drove straight home with my boots still caked in dried mud, my back aching from the physical labor, ready to surprise Rebecca with her favorite pastries from that Italian bakery she liked in the city. I had this stupid romantic idea that maybe we could sit outside together on the porch and talk like we used 2 years ago. Maybe find a little spark of connection to hold on to and build from. When I pulled into the circular driveway, I noticed Marcus's black SUV parked near the garage at an odd angle. Nothing strange about that initially, since he came by now and then. He helped me with odd repairs around the property, sometimes dropped off fresh venison after a successful hunting trip. But something felt immediately wrong in my gut. The house was too quiet, the air too still and heavy. I walked in through the back door, past the kitchen where everything looked normal, and I heard a sound from upstairs. A laugh. It was soft, muffled, coming from the second floor. Her laugh specifically. That same exact laugh she used to give me when I'd tickle her behind the knees. The one that made her eyes wrinkle at the corners in that beautiful way. But it wasn't meant for me this time. I didn't storm up the stairs like you see in movies. I didn't yell or break things. I didn't want to believe what my gut was already screaming at me loud and clear. I walked up slowly, deliberately, taking my time, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I reached the bedroom door, it was slightly open, and I heard Marcus's voice clearly, then hers again, intimate and close and unmistakable. I pushed open the door fully. There they were, laid out before me. My wife of 30 years, my best friend since college. No shame on their faces, no panic in their eyes. Just the kind of heavy, suffocating silence that follows when two people know they've been caught red-handed but don't care enough to explain themselves or apologize. Marcus scrambled desperately to pull on his shirt, fumbling with the buttons like a teenager. Rebecca didn't move at all. She just sat calmly on the edge of the bed and looked directly at me with zero emotion visible on her face, not a single flicker of guilt or remorse. She crossed her legs casually, fixed her hair with her hand like she was getting ready for brunch, and said in the calmest voice I'd ever heard from her, "You're home early today." Marcus tried to say something to me, some excuse or explanation. I don't remember the exact words he used, something hollow and weak and pathetic. I wasn't listening to him anyway. I turned around and walked out without saying a single word to either of them. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall or break furniture. I didn't do any of the dramatic things you might expect. I went down to the garage, sat on a stack of unused plywood, and stared at the concrete floor for what felt like 2 solid hours. Everything that had been slowly building over the last few years suddenly made perfect, crystal-clear sense. The late nights she claimed were work meetings or charity events. The fake smiles plastered on when I came home tired. The way she started pulling away emotionally from Madison, from my mother, from me and our life together. That night, I slept in the guest room where she'd been staying. The expensive pastries stayed in the box on the kitchen counter untouched. The next morning, when I woke up, they were in the trash, and Rebecca had already filed formal divorce papers with the court. There was no argument, no begging, no pretending we could somehow work it out with counseling. She was completely done with me, and she wanted what she thought belonged to her legally. Half of everything we owned, more than half if she could possibly manage it through lawyers. I tried to be civil about the whole terrible situation. I told her we could settle this quietly and fairly without destroying each other in court. She actually laughed in my face and said, "You're the builder, not the brain in this relationship. Let the court decide what's fair." She hired one of the most expensive and ruthless divorce attorneys in the entire state, this sharp, cold man named Patterson. Crisp designer suit, perfect white teeth, eyes like a shark circling blood in the water. He absolutely shredded my reputation systematically in court over months, claimed I was emotionally unstable and controlling, said I had serious anger management issues, twisted the truth until it barely resembled the life we'd actually lived together. They painted me as this controlling workaholic who neglected his wife's emotional needs completely. They pulled text messages completely out of context to make me look bad, called in 2 former subcontractors who had sued me over a payment dispute years back during the recession. They even subpoenaed my financial records from that tough year to suggest I'd been hiding assets from her all along. It was a systematic character assassination. I sat there in a suit that felt too tight around my neck, watching my entire life get torn apart piece by piece in front of a room full of strangers and a judge. Rebecca didn't cry once during the whole brutal ordeal. Not a single tear fell. She wore designer black dresses every day, hair pinned up perfectly by professionals, legs crossed elegantly like she was attending a fashion show instead of dismantling our marriage. When Madison bravely testified on my behalf, trying to speak up for me, trying to tell the judge honestly that her mother had changed and become someone else entirely, Rebecca wouldn't even look at her own daughter sitting there. After 11 brutal, exhausting months of hearings and legal battles, the judge finally issued his ruling from the bench. The mansion was hers to keep. Most of our combined life savings, hers. Retirement account split down the middle. My tools, my truck, and the small, cramped apartment I'd rented just to have a roof over my head while this nightmare was going on, that was what I got to keep from 30 years of marriage. I wasn't surprised by the judge's decision, honestly. I was surprised by how completely empty I felt when it came down officially. Not angry, not sad, just completely numb inside. Like I'd been watching someone else's tragic story play out on a screen, and I was just some random guy sitting in the background watching it happen. Outside the courthouse, I stood completely alone in the parking lot. Marcus was nowhere in sight, of course. I imagined he was already inside the mansion with Rebecca, helping her celebrate this victory, maybe pouring expensive champagne into those crystal glasses I had carefully unpacked myself the day we moved into that house years ago. Rebecca walked past me confidently with her lawyer Patterson beside her, both of them looking extremely satisfied with the outcome. She looked over at me just once with cold eyes. No emotion, no hesitation, no acknowledgement of our history. She leaned in close enough that only I could hear her clearly and whispered it. "You're worthless." Then she turned and walked away without looking back even once. I didn't chase after her. I didn't say a single word in response. I just walked slowly to the parking garage, climbed into my truck, and sat behind the wheel with my hands still shaking uncontrollably. I had lost my wife, my best friend, my home, and the future I'd spent 30 years building with my bare hands and sweat. But that night, everything was about to change in a way I never could have possibly imagined. I couldn't face the white walls and stale air of that rented apartment. Instead, I drove north without any real plan or destination, just a desperate need to get away from the city, from everything that reminded me of what I had lost. Around 11 p.m., I pulled into a diner parking lot off the highway, eliminated the engine, and leaned my head back against the seat exhausted. The phone rang suddenly. Unknown number on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. My first thought was that it might be the court with more bad news, or maybe Rebecca calling to rub in what she had taken from me. I almost hung up immediately. A woman with a calm European accent asked, "Is this David Harrison?" I hesitated before answering. "Who's asking?" she said professionally. "This is Claire Beaumont with Rothschild International Banking in Geneva, Switzerland. We've been trying to reach you for several years without success. Are you the nephew of Victor Harrison?" My Uncle Victor hadn't crossed my mind in a very long time. He had been my father's older brother, the oddball in a family of carpenters and farmers and working people. He wore expensive tailored suits, smoked Cuban cigars, and had this air about him like he knew something the rest of us didn't understand about how the world really worked. He came around once every few years, handed me crisp $100 bills on my birthday, and then disappeared again without explanation. He hadn't been seen by anyone since I was in my mid-20s. Rumor in the family was he moved to Europe, made a fortune in international finance, then vanished completely. I cleared my throat. "Yeah, Victor was my uncle. Why are you calling me about him now?" The woman continued in her professional banking tone. "Mr. Harrison, you are the sole listed beneficiary to a dormant account with our institution. We are required by international law to contact you before its automatic liquidation. The account has not been accessed for 16 years. Your uncle gave very specific written instructions to release the funds only after a certain legal condition had been met." I sat up straighter in my seat. "What condition exactly?" She paused for just a moment. "We were instructed to wait until you were no longer legally bound by a marriage license." The words hit me like a gust of freezing air through the window. I sat up straighter in my seat, gripping the phone tighter. "What kind of funds are we talking about here?" There was a longer pause this time. "The account currently contains $52,347,893.19 as of this evening's statement." I didn't speak. I physically couldn't form words. My hands started to tremble holding the phone. I looked down at the dashboard like the numbers might somehow appear there to confirm what I had just heard. The woman asked if I was still on the line. I managed to say yes, barely whispered it. She explained carefully that my uncle had transferred a complex series of off-the-books investments, including private equities and old-world banking bonds, into this account over a span of about 10 years before vanishing completely from the financial world. The money had grown slowly but consistently over the years, waiting patiently in a vault, protected by silence and multiple layers of legal shielding across jurisdictions. I asked why nobody had contacted me earlier about this inheritance. She said, "Your uncle was extremely meticulous in his planning, Mr. Harrison. He did not trust your spouse at all. His words, not mine. He instructed us very clearly to wait until your marital status changed officially," he said, and I quote his words directly. "David needs to be free before he remembers who he really is." That phrase absolutely stunned me to my core. I remembered Victor saying something eerily similar when I was a teenager, back when I thought he was just a flashy old man with too many secrets and too much money. He had taken me fishing once when I was 16 years old, and I remembered him saying very clearly, "Money's just a mirror, kid. It'll show you what you're made of inside. Just make sure you know who you are when you see that reflection." I never forgot those specific words, even when I didn't fully understand what he meant by them at the time. The banker continued professionally. "We require your physical presence in Geneva to process final identification and complete the necessary paperwork. We will cover all travel and accommodation expenses naturally. Once verified, the funds can be transferred to wherever you designate." I didn't say yes right away. I told her I needed some time to process this information. She said she understood completely and gave me a direct contact number I could call anytime, day or night. After the call ended, I sat there in the dark cab of my truck, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in my life. I looked up at the stars through the windshield. Somewhere out there in the universe, my entire reality had just shifted on its axis. But I didn't feel powerful or excited or happy. I felt small, confused, caught between two completely different lives. I called my mother, Patricia, the next morning and told her everything that had happened. She didn't react with excitement or disbelief or shock. She just said in her calm, knowing way, "That man always did know more than he let on. Maybe now you can finally breathe again, honey." Madison was the next person I called. She was quiet for a long while after I explained everything, then said, "Dad, you deserve this after everything you've been through. But please don't let it turn you into someone you're not." I booked a flight to Geneva that same afternoon. No hesitation, no second thoughts. I packed a duffel bag with 2 pairs of jeans, 3 shirts, a worn leather wallet, and the watch my father gave me when I graduated high school. I left everything else behind. I didn't tell Rebecca any of this. She didn't deserve to know what was happening in my life. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need another courtroom battle. What I needed was to find out what my uncle had left me and why he did it this way. Because something deep inside told me this wasn't just about dollars sitting in a bank account overseas. It was about something much deeper and more meaningful than money. The plane landed in Geneva on a gray Monday morning. The city looked like something from a postcard. Clean streets, old stone buildings, impeccably dressed people everywhere. I hadn't been outside the country since my honeymoon to Mexico 30 years ago. And now, here I was, walking through a Swiss airport with a bank invitation tucked in my coat pocket. A driver met me at arrivals, black Mercedes with tinted windows. He held a sign with my name and greeted me with a firm handshake and a polite nod. No small talk or questions. He drove straight through the heart of the city and up a hill overlooking Lake Geneva. The car stopped in front of a stone building with tall iron gates and gold letters etched into the arch above the entrance. Rothschild International Banking. Inside, everything smelled like the expensive leather and fresh wood polish. I was escorted through a long hallway lined with oil portraits into a private office that looked more like a library than a bank. Floor-to-ceiling mahogany bookshelves, a massive antique globe, and windows with a view of the lake that could quiet your soul. A distinguished man in his early 60s stepped forward with a warm smile and introduced himself as Alain Moreau. "Mr. Harrison, welcome to Geneva. We've been waiting a very long time for you." He poured me coffee in a delicate china cup, handed me a thick leather folder, and began to explain everything in detail. Uncle Victor hadn't just vanished from our lives randomly. He had intentionally and systematically removed himself from the American financial system. He had taken his investments, sold off his properties, and moved his capital into a trust protected under multiple foreign jurisdictions. He had used shell companies, old money banking channels, and insider codes that most people don't even know exist. It wasn't illegal, but it was extremely private and virtually untraceable by normal means. The folder held letters, real handwritten letters from Victor, addressed directly to me, locked away in a vault until my divorce was finalized. In the first letter, he wrote, "David, I know this won't make sense right away, but I've been watching you from a distance all these years. I saw how hard you worked. I saw the kind of man you became. I always wanted to leave you something meaningful. Not just money, but genuine freedom. I couldn't give it to you while you were married to that woman. I'm sorry to be blunt, but I never trusted her at all. I saw through her long before you did." Another letter included a journal entry from years earlier when I was just a kid. It said, "David builds with his hands. He thinks with his heart. He'll be a better man than I ever was." I had to stop reading because my eyes welled up with tears. For so many years, I thought Victor had forgotten about us, about me specifically. Turns out he was planning something the entire time, something specifically for me. Alain slid a document across the polished table. It authorized the full release of the funds into any account I named. He carefully explained the total assets, including stocks, gold holdings, and a private villa in the south of France that was technically also mine now. My hands shook as I signed the papers. Just like that, with a few signatures, my life changed again. But it wasn't just about the money sitting in accounts. It was about what came next and what I chose to do with this unexpected second chance at life. The flight home was completely different from the flight there. I wasn't the same man who had left. The bitterness from the divorce hadn't disappeared entirely, but something fundamental had shifted deep inside me. I felt grounded again in a way I hadn't in years, not because I suddenly had millions of dollars, but because I finally understood that I hadn't actually lost everything like I thought. I had just been stripped down to who I really was at my core. The first call I made when I landed was to Madison. I told her everything that had happened in Geneva. She didn't ask me for anything or expect anything. She only said, "Does this mean you're really coming back home now?" I told her yes, absolutely. But home wouldn't be that empty, cramped apartment, and it definitely wouldn't be the mansion my ex-wife now lived in with my ex-best friend. I bought a ranch house outside Charlotte. It had open land, a wraparound porch, and enough space for Madison to visit anytime she wanted. I fixed it up myself over several weeks, installed all the windows, laid the flooring, built the deck with my own hands. Every single nail I hammered in went in with purpose and meaning. A week later, Rebecca somehow found out about the money. She called my number. I let it ring. She called again immediately. This time I answered. "David," she said, her voice softer than I'd heard in years, almost vulnerable. "I made a terrible mistake. I never stopped loving you deep down. I was angry and confused about everything. We could try again, start over fresh." I let her talk without interrupting. Then I replied calmly, "You didn't love me when I had everything, Rebecca. You loved what I provided for you. Now you want back in because I'm worth more on paper. I'm not the same man you walked away from. I forgive you for what you did, but I'll never forget what you said to me outside that courthouse, and I'll never be yours again." I hung up before she could respond. Marcus tried calling too a few days later. He left a voicemail. "David, man to man. I messed up badly. Things got complicated between us. I should have been honest with you from the start." I deleted the message without listening to the rest of it. I didn't need apologies from either of them. I didn't need revenge or closure from a conversation. I needed peace. And I finally found it. The last gift my uncle left me wasn't in Swiss francs or property deeds. It was the truth about who I was and what I was capable of. He saw what I couldn't see in myself. He gave me the means to rebuild not just a house or a bank account, but a life that was genuinely mine again. And this time I wouldn't waste a single moment of it. I wake up most mornings before the sun rises now, just like I always have. Old habits stick with you. But now, instead of rushing out the door in work boots with a thermos full of black coffee, I sit on the porch of my new home and listen to the quiet. The house is nothing flashy or impressive. It's a simple ranch-style place with a long gravel driveway, an old oak tree out front, and a creaky porch swing I built with my own two hands. I don't need marble floors or $1,000,000 chandeliers anymore. I just need honesty, peace, and the kind of silence that comes without guilt or shame attached to it. Madison visits often, sometimes just for the weekend. She brings her guitar, sits on the edge of the porch, and strums while I grill steaks or just sip my morning coffee. She tells me about her life, her goals, her ideas for opening a small bakery someday. I offered her the money to start it tomorrow if she wanted, but she insists she has to earn it herself. That's how I know she'll make it and succeed. She's got fire inside her, but it's steady and controlled. I see the best parts of both her parents in her. My determination and work ethic, her mother's focus and intelligence. I just hope she learns to love better than we did. My mother, Patricia, still lives in the house I grew up in, upstate. She flat out refuses to move, even though I offered to buy her a beautiful new place anywhere she wants. She says, "I have everything I need right here, honey." I finally get it now. You don't always need to upgrade or move forward to be happy. Sometimes standing still in exactly the right place is enough. Rebecca never called again after that conversation. Marcus never showed up at my door trying to apologize in person. The life they chose together is theirs to carry now. I don't wish them pain or suffering, but I no longer carry any part of their story on my back. I've spent the last few months learning how to truly enjoy stillness and simple moments. I bought a dog, a shepherd mix I named Cooper. He follows me everywhere I go. I joined a local veterans group even though I never served myself, just to volunteer and lend a hand building things. I find genuine peace in building ramps, decks, and benches for people who need them. It reminds me that the work of your hands still matters deeply, no matter how heavy your bank account gets. I also made an important decision about the money. I took a significant portion of it and started a foundation called the Harrison Fund to help single fathers who are rebuilding their lives after divorce. I remember those nights sleeping in my truck behind that diner, not knowing where to go next, feeling like the entire world had shut me out completely. No man should ever have to feel that alone and helpless. If I can help even one of them get back on their feet and find their way, then maybe everything I lost and everything I unexpectedly gained will mean something more than just numbers in an account. The greatest lesson I've learned through all of this is that worth isn't measured by what you lose or what you own. It's measured by what you can rebuild when everything is stripped away from you. Money didn't fix me or heal my wounds. It didn't erase the betrayal or make the pain disappear. But it gave me a genuine second chance at life. And I used that chance to become the man I used to be before life slowly wore me down. So if you're reading this and you've been broken by someone walked out on you or took everything you thought made you who you are, I want you to know this one truth. There's something inside you that can't be taken away by anyone. That part of you is still there waiting. You just have to dig deep enough to find it. And when you do finally find it, protect it fiercely. Build your new life around it. Let it lead you back home to yourself.